Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the 21 and Sensory podcast. On today's episode, I have special guest Jake Steiner. Jake established endmyopia.org as a resource to offer people the opportunity to explore the science behind our eyesight. So Jake advocates for an evidence-based sort of approach to understanding myopia, which is a word that means nearsightedness, if anyone doesn't know. And he explores methods to potentially reverse it. And he has his own experience reversing his -5 diopter myopia. He has also helped over 1.2 million people reduce their dependence on corrective lenses through his website, his popular YouTube channel, his Twitter, and his Facebook group. So he's got lots going on. Jake also stresses that he's not a medical doctor or an optometrist, and he's just kind of set out to solve this problem with his eyesight. So yeah, I'm super interested to have a chat with Jake, as I actually wear glasses 24/7. So Jake, do you want to say hi?
Jake wants to say hi. I'm referring to myself in the third person. That is a great intro. Thank you.
No worries. It's really nice to have you on. So I think let's start from the beginning. What is myopia? How would you describe it, and how did you sort of come across it yourself?
Sure. So myopia is nearsightedness, a situation where you can't see clearly far away without glasses. So anybody who needs to wear glasses to see clearly at a distance, nearsightedness, depending on where you live, it's called short-sightedness. Myopia is the clinical term, I suppose. And myopia, I called it that without realizing many years ago that nobody knows what myopia is. So, yeah.
And a word that you kind of never really come across, but as soon as you say nearsightedness, everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah, it would have been wiser to name it something related.
That's all right though. Once you know, you know.
Yeah, true.
What is your kind of journey with it? Because I've kind of, as I said before, I've kind of gone over your website and stuff, and I saw that you had a -5 prescription, and that now you have 20/20 vision, which I'm very intrigued about.
Yeah, so I started, this is going on 20 years now that I started playing with this, and I just had bad eyesight. It started in my early teens, as it did for a lot of people that are in my age range. Now things start usually a little bit younger. And I started wearing glasses. I didn't really question it, and it got stronger and stronger and stronger. And eventually I found myself at a point where my eyesight was still getting worse, and I don't know why. I went to an optometrist and I finally asked the question, why is this happening? And they said it's genetic. And my background, I started out as an analyst and a stock trader and doing a lot of things that require research. Mm-hmm. And genetic isn't a likely answer really for short-sightedness, because it didn't exist or hardly existed 50 years ago. If you go 100 years back, there's no record of most anybody being short-sighted. So it can't be, there's no sudden worldwide genetic mutation of such a specific nature. So I'm like, it can't be genetic. And I started doing research. This was kind of before the internet was cool like it is today. So I spent a bunch of time in libraries. I found that the answer is shockingly simple. What actually causes nearsightedness. And then I made a bunch of assumptions in trying to reverse it, and eventually succeeded. And then eventually more and more people got interested, and it turned into a bit of a thing.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. It's interesting to hear that you also started wearing glasses in your teens, and that you didn't question it. I'm exactly the same. When you're told you need glasses, you're like, well, that's it, I need glasses. You don't question it, and you think, that's the best for you. But actually it's really interesting to see from your website all these little things that you can do that can, even just by a few little kind of percentages, can change your eyesight. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. And I think we have this trust in institutional authority. That's kind of maybe human nature. I'm not sure. But when somebody's title says doctor and they call you up glasses prescriptions, you just don't really question it. It's, I think, normal.
So did you find that you used to, because I think you said on your website that you were kind of in finance and trading and investing, were you spending a lot of time on screens and stuff? Was that part of your every day?
Ridiculous amounts. Okay. Just crazy. Yeah, it's not great for your eyesight to spend that much time in front of screens. And I didn't know anything about wearing your glasses that are meant for distance vision while you're looking at something that's inches from your face is extra terrible for your eyesight. If somebody told you that, like the first time you got glasses, always take them off when you don't need them, your eyes wouldn't really get worse. Like the biggest contributor to that, your so-called prescriptions getting higher and higher, is wearing those things, doing close-up, screen time, and when you don't need them.
See, that's mad because, like, for me, for example, I wear glasses all the time and my prescription isn't like that much. I think it's like -2, -2.5 or something. And I wear them all the time. And like you said, like, you don't really realize that actually I obviously need them for things further away, but like close up on laptops, and because I'm a designer, I'm always like on screens. Like, I probably don't need this prescription up close because I can see things up close. So it definitely like makes you like question why you just kind of wear glasses and don't really take them off that much, when actually, like you're saying, you could actually be helping your own eyesight a bit.
Yeah, and you're lucky that you haven't gone minus past 2. A lot of people, as they're doing this, continue to progress. Like I ended up at -5. A lot of Asian populations have a genetic marker that causes their eye to elongate more easily, apparently, or so suggests the current science. And they get to like -9, 10, 11, like high amounts. And it's all that. And if you were to take your glasses off when you don't need them, if you start a habit to always take them off when you use screens, and try to stay as far back as you can and still see clearly, after a month or so, if you start putting on your glasses in front of the screen, you'll feel uncomfortable.
That's crazy. Like, just the amount that your eyes can adapt to that situation and get used to it. And like
and that's exactly what happens. You just adopt to this strain that is a pretty noticeable strain. And a lot of people can't go back to wearing glasses for close up because it just feels strenuous and makes you dizzy and uncomfortable, because it is a massive amount of focal plane change that you don't want or need.
Mm-hmm. And I read on your website about the active focus as well. Is that something you want to like describe a bit? Because that to me was quite interesting. How I think I heard you say, it might have been on your YouTube actually, how like when sort of reading or something like that, if you blink, you can kind of focus better. Is that right?
Yeah. So what happens is your eyes refocus every time you blink. Mm-hmm. So it's just a moment, right? Like that moment of black, and you open your eyes again, eyes looking for focus again. And you can actually see better than you think when you try to. And for people who never worn glasses, like they have this built-in ability to, I call it active focus, like actively trying to see a thing. Like you walk into a Starbucks and it's moody, dark lighting, and the menu behind the barista is kind of far away, and you've spent a bunch of time in front of screens, and your eyes are not perfect. You'll notice people who've never worn glasses to just blink at it and it clears up. It's like it's a thing that everybody has that you kind of lose if you always wear glasses that overcorrect your vision to always be perfect. Okay. And when you step back from that, like for example, if you don't wear your glasses for your work, you can sit in front of your screen, you can figure out how far can I see clearly, and then move back a centimeter or 2 or 3 or 5. And then as things get a little bit blurry, blink at it. And it doesn't necessarily happen immediately or the first time, but eventually you figure out, okay, there's a little bit of latitude. Mm-hmm. And that little bit of latitude, if you turn it into a habit, becomes the main stimulus that improves your eyesight gradually. Like it's not an immediate thing, but over a course of months, you can reduce the amount of diopters you need to see pretty effectively.
And yeah, like you say, it's not an immediate thing, but even just being able to see a difference over time, like that's quite interesting. And how long did it take for you to kind of get from your prescription of -5 all the way to like 2020? Is that like quite a lot of hard work you've put in, obviously?
It was forever. It took forever because I didn't know what I was doing. I was basing it on first I was reading every book I could find, every method. I was assuming that something must be out there. When I figured out what causes nearsightedness, which is not an illness, it's not a medical condition, it's not genetic, it's an adjustment of the eye. We can talk about that if you like. But once I figured out how it works, which is really well explained in clinical science, I figured I can affect that mechanism because it's designed. The eyeball is designed to give you good eyesight. And the lenses that you wear literally cause the eyesight to readjust to the lens, making you dependent on the lens. So my assumption was you can wean off of the lens the same way that you got put on the lens. You started out with less diopters, and then slowly they went up. Every time you go to the optometrist, they make a small increase.
Yeah.
For most people. So my assumption was I can do the same thing in reverse, and the assumption turned out to be true. But the devil being in the details, there's a lot more to how to do it effectively that I didn't know at the time. So it took a long time. But for some reason, I was just a little fixated on this. And now you don't need the -2. You know what I mean? It would take you like 2 years. It would take you like a month of figuring out better habits and making friends with your eyes. And then about 2 years, and you won't need those things.
See, that's mad to me because like, I'd love that because I'm obviously very dependent on them at the moment. And like things like sports and stuff like that, it's such a hassle to have to wear glasses and worry about them getting knocked and stuff like that. And to, I don't know, almost, it sounds bad, but to be like free of glasses would, it kind of gives you more options. And I think I'm definitely going to try. What you're saying is just start small. You're not saying, it's a really big thing to integrate as part of your life. Just even, not wearing your glasses when you're a few centimeters away from screens and things like that. I think it's definitely doable.
Super doable. And speaking of sports, I don't like the word life changing because it just there's too much hype, but lots of things happen when you wear glasses. And like before I wore glasses, I used to be on a rowing team. I played water polo. I love to be active. And as I became more dependent on the glasses, things like a ball flying through the air in my direction scared me because I couldn't see it well enough. And I didn't have, with glasses, I didn't have any peripheral vision, right? Like because you can see out of the center of the lens perfectly. And then as you move towards the periphery of the lens, the image is distorted. And then past the frame, there's nothing. So your visual cortex, for one, goes, what is going on? Peripheral vision is not working. So there's a low state of anxiety potentially always happening. And also then if you're involved with sports, there's a certain amount of fear that happens because things that are motion that come from the periphery aren't obvious. So you need contact lenses that can kind of help. But especially if you're wearing glasses, it affects social behavior because your neck and eye movement is different from what we perceive as natural. Like you're stuck behind these lenses. So the way your body language is subtly different. So that causes people's body language that are interacting with you to be subtly different, like affecting how you interact with people. It changes how you walk because you have to look at the ground to see because your peripheral vision doesn't work great. So people don't realize how much glasses really kind of affect and narrow your experience of your surroundings because you can really only see well out of the center of those things.
Exactly. And I remember when I first started wearing my glasses, I didn't realize to see I'd have to move my head rather than move my eyes because like you say, you can only really see through the very like center. So you end up moving your head so much more and actually your eyes are pretty kind of almost static, just like a little
robot.
Yeah, exactly. I think like it's interesting to see like all the different kind of feedback and stuff that you get like on your website. And I know you have like a podcast as well where people come on and like talk about their journey and stuff. And even people with much higher prescriptions, even just coming down even a little bit, it's amazing to think that actually you can have an effect on your eyesight. It isn't, necessarily genetic, like you were saying. But I also like appreciate that you mentioned that, your eyes aren't ill or like broken in any way. And it's not, to treat or to cure it. It's to kind of just change the state of your eyes.
For one, I think it's extremely empowering to have that experience of you reduce a diopter. You know what I mean? Or if you go from a -2 to a -1.5, it will change your relationship to yourself because you go, I can change this. I'm not a patient, right? These things aren't prescriptions. The only reason they're called prescriptions is because there's been millions of dollars of lobbying going on by the lens manufacturing industry. They're clear curved pieces of plastic, right? If you need reading glasses, it's the same thing, opposite direction. You can buy those over the counter. It's just because they cost $2 to $5, euros, pounds, whatever, to the optometrist, who then sells them to you for thousands of % markup. And to maintain a profit margin, they had to make sure that not anybody can sell those lenses that would drive the price down. So they created this whole racket of prescriptions. So you don't question it, right? You have to go to these people and you don't question why a $2 clear piece of plastic would be hundreds of dollars, pounds, or euros.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's the thing, like, that I can't get around is that, you know, every time your prescription changes even a little bit, they're like, you need new glasses. And it's like, well, that's like £200. Like, it's an expensive thing to commit to.
And it's really not. I have the wholesale price sheets for every lens manufacturer from optometrist friends, and they're literally single-digit amounts.
Wow.
For anything, just about anything. Like the special coatings and this and that, doesn't matter. Most lenses, single-digit amounts, and the markups are just, it's all profit.
If it's anything like medical related, you just kind of don't question it and just accept it. Like you're saying, there's such a big markup, and it's, you know, it's a business at the end of the day. Like, you know, it's all about money.
I feel terrible because I am fairly not into the fringes and anti-mainstream and conspiracy, which this isn't, but it still sounds, the first time you hear about it, you're like, oh, that's crazy talk, right? Like, why have I never heard of this before? And it makes me feel a little bit, I don't know, sometimes amused, sometimes annoyed that I sound like one of those quote unquote people that say they're all wrong. They're just trying to make money. And it's kind of supply and demand. People are happy. There's a quick fix. There's no personal accountability. There's no, this is kind of your fault, problem, or thing that you can solve. You're too addicted to screens. You need to go play more. Instead, you're just getting these glasses. You're told it's not your fault. You pay the money, you're fine. So a lot of people who hear about this really are like, I don't want to know. You know, so it's kind of a supply and demand thing. But at the same time, also, absolutely, it is a business. And especially in the first 10 years of doing this, I got a lot of pushback. I got a lot of bullying from that industry, trying to get me to shut up, trying to get me to not talk, even though the majority of what I'm doing is quoting clinical science from optometry journals. It's literally there, you know, clinical journals that describe the things that I post on the website that say, hey, this causes it. And it's not an illness. Like, it's just your eyes adjusting to your environment, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that, like, you're very like open and upfront and very much like, I'm not a medical professional, but, you know, you've clearly done your research. You've clearly, you know, experienced this yourself and been able to make it work for you. And I think it's quite interesting, just the fact that you were kind of fixated on this topic and you really did a deep dive into it as someone without, you know, that kind of optometrist kind of knowledge. But just that you yourself managed to improve your own eyesight is really like an interesting thing. And I think a lot of why people probably kind of stumble across your YouTube and stuff like that, like once I started on one of your videos, I was like, oh, like you just like become invested. And I was like, onto another one and onto another one. Like it's really interesting just being able to like potentially manage your own health and manage your own eyesight, I think. So yeah, I think it's a good resource.
And the amazing thing is, so because of this, I've ended up on lots of health podcasts, and I've never been that much into these things, but like I found out you can reverse heart disease, and there's just shocking amounts of stuff out there where you go, this cannot be true. But literally there is machines that you can go to the hospital that scan your heart for arterial calcification. I never had any idea that this even existed, that can predict heart disease extremely accurately. And then this guy, Ivor Cummins, has an amazing podcast. He discusses this, and he has lots of people on that reversed their calcification and their risk of heart disease, stuff you never hear about. So ever since doing this eye thing, I think it's really cool because once you go, okay, so this works, you learn how to distinguish internet unicorn farming, you know, X, Y, and Z will cure anything, from actually being able to fix things that we're not told are fixable because there's no profit incentive to tell us. So it's super fun, whether you start with eyesight or whether you start with anything else, to go, what of these things can be untangled to what degree and maybe make my life more interesting.
Yeah, just that concept of reversing a health condition is wild because, like you say, it's not something you ever hear about. You know, from eyesight all the way up to like your heart, you do have control over these organs.
It's so amazing. I literally, when I found out about this, because I was on Ivor's podcast, I'm like, this cannot be. My parents are both medical doctors, and I've never heard of this. I get annual, serious, all kinds of checkups because I'm a big nerd and I'm getting older. And I've never heard of this. And I went to a fancy hospital and asked about this scanning thing. And they're like, yep, we have one. It costs millions of dollars. And I'm like, oh, I will have my heart scanned. And it makes a 3D, like it rotates around your body and it 3D images your heart. It's freaking cool. I'm like, how do we never hear about this? And literally, like, it'll show the arteries in your heart. And if they're being calcified, we're predictive. Wow. You know what I mean? And everybody always just says, oh, eat healthy and who knows, and maybe you will, maybe you won't. But you can actually show these things. And I've found since then so many topics from like, who knew? You know, like some things are unicorn farming, you know, wishful thinking ideas, but there's tons of stuff out there where, you know, health is kind of related to how you use your body and how you interact with your environment. And lots of things are not permanent necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so when did you start your website? Was it kind of, were you during the process of you trying to kind of reverse your eyesight, or was it sort of after when you'd kind of realized it was doable? Like, what way round did you sort of start things?
Oh God, it was an ongoing, it used to be a rant blog.
Nice.
Because mostly I started reading just medical journals in libraries, and they explain that nearsightedness starts out as a muscle spasm. You have something called a ciliary muscle in your eye that focuses the lens in your eye, and that muscle gets stuck from too much close up. Like whenever you're looking at things up close, that muscle is extremely tight to focus the lens at something to give you good close up vision. And if you do that for hours and hours every day, that muscle gets stuck. It's a muscle spasm called pseudomyopia or near-induced transient myopia. And that becomes lens-induced myopia once you start wearing lenses, because the eyeball elongates in response to the focal plane change of the lens. I mean, boring, but you can go to scholar.google.com, look all this up. Like it's definitive. Just to be like, what's up with this? And they would kick me out of their office. Not everybody, but literally the reaction was so negative that I started just ranting. And if you look at the early parts of the website, it's definitely apparent. Mostly it was just me having fun with trolling the establishment. And for a while, I tried to get rid of it and let other more serious people deal with it, who then couldn't deal with the backlash from the mainstream. And it slowly just continued. It's like I have coffee in the morning, spend an hour doing that, and then I do real work. And I just never stopped doing it. And by now it's become this strangely just spreading thing, which is fun.
I mean, it seems like you have like the Facebook group and like the Discord and stuff like that, and there's like this constant like discussion and like, you know, comparison between like how people are doing like in terms of progress and stuff like that, which I think is great. Like you want, you know, whenever you start something like, you know, even something like, I don't know, like weight loss or something like that, you want to see people at the point that you want to get to, kind of thing. And I think that's what's great about like the fact that you have this kind of open Facebook group and stuff where you can actually see people are actually benefiting, and it's not just you like all the time saying, you know, it really worked for me. Like you can actually see it's working for like a lot of people.
Yeah. And you know, that was kind of part of, I don't know when that started. Just it was another, you know, one random coffee day. I was like, maybe we'll have a Facebook group. But now it's like 20 some odd thousand members. Like it's crazy, really.
Wow.
But super helpful, because in the beginning I was just a rambling lunatic, you know, and over the years, like it turned from I was being totally ignored to then people would make fun of me, to then there was a fair amount of anger for a while from the just establishment. I get angry emails from optometrists and stuff, to now where, because so many people share stories for just so many years, it's, even though it's heavily debated, obviously, because it's, you know, fringy new ideas, there are so many people that it's impossible to dispute that something's going on, which is fun.
That's the thing though, like obviously like the online world and like trolling and that sort of thing. But I mean, I don't feel like, you know, you're like preaching about it and you're saying like, this is the way forward and stuff, you're kind of supplying it as a method that people can try. And I think that's like the best way to go about it. And I don't really understand why people would be reaching out to you to kind of have a go at you, because, you're not kind of pushing your beliefs on people or anything like that.
Yeah, I think I understand it because, for example, my dad, medical doctor, really believes in statin drugs to control cholesterol for heart disease. And there are studies now showing that that's not really necessarily a good idea, but he won't look at any studies. But I'm like, can you just take a peek at this? He refuses to. And then I talked to a friend of mine who's a psychologist who explained something, as this was a complicated story about beliefs, pillars of beliefs. So people had their realities made up of things that they believe to be true, right? And the more central it is to what you do, like if you're an optometrist and you tell people every day this is genetic, you believe it. It's part of your core reality. When somebody tries to upset that, it's like a defense mechanism of the brain to go, no, this guy's wrong. And they attack you because they're trying to protect their perception of reality as they see it. So I've become a lot more respectful over the last few years of that. Before I was just counterattacking and being equally aggressive. Whereas now I'm like, I respect that. That for you, this is more of a religion almost than just let's debate the science, But I think that's kind of the thing. And I'm trying to be a little bit more respectful of the fact that it's a state of mind and an emotional place for some people. And I try to not necessarily push them more than they're willing to take a look at things.
Like you say, if people are saying day in, day out, like professionals are saying, it's a genetic thing, then yeah, of course, it's just kind of part of their job, isn't it? Just to say that and to keep, sticking to that same story if they don't know any better. So no, that's
yeah. And plus people come to them now because this thing has gotten just curiously popular and question the optometrist, which I always tell people, don't do that necessarily, but that will upset them also because to them, and I completely respect that, right? Like you got trained, you have a degree, you went to school, you have a practice, you believe this is how it is. And then random people come in because they read a thing on the internet. So crazy dude on the internet says, you're ripping me off and this is not genetic and what's up. And they'll be upset. I totally understand that. And I'm borderline apologetic about it at this point because I don't want to cause that. My only point is if you'd prefer a life without being stuck behind glasses, here's a way to do it, right? Minus the antagonism.
Yeah. No, that's true. So in terms of kind of like measuring like your myopia at home, I feel like on your website you have like a measurement like tape that people can download. Is that right?
Yeah. So nearsightedness, your diopters are just a distance how far you can see clearly. When you go to the optometrist and they put you in a chair and they do all this complicated stuff, they're only measuring one thing, which is how far can you see before there's blur. That's all diopters are. So it's like 100 divided by the centimeters that you can see before there's blur equals the diopters of your glasses, right? So if you can see 50 centimeters before things get blurry, 100 divided by 50 is 2. So you need 2 diopter glasses to see clearly at any distance, right? So for example, if you're wearing -2, you can see about 50 centimeters before there's blur. Yeah. And the reason I love this part is because it takes this complicated sounding abstraction of prescription and diopters, and I don't know what all this stuff means, and I have to go to the optometrist to measure it, to actually all you need is a measuring tape, or we have a phone app that sort of works also, and take a book, put it in front of your face, slowly move it further away till the text starts being a tiny bit blurry or different than it looked closer. You measure that distance, it's going to be the power of your glasses that you need to see clearly. And once you do that, it's kind of strangely empowering that you go, this is all I need, because that's all it is, right? Like all the fancy machines do nothing else. And then you can go, if I do the same measurement next to a window, the distance is going to be greater, meaning your myopia is actually less. You need less strong glasses. And if you measure after 4 hours of Netflix on an iPad, your vision is going to be worse. The centimeter is going to be lower. your diopter is higher. If you eat a pizza and drink a Coke, the centimeter measurements will be lower, your vision's worse. And if you do a bunch of those measurements, you start realizing how much that number fluctuates. And once you do that, it becomes really tempting to affect that number. Like it's like a game, right? Like now you're at 50. I bet you can get to 60 centimeters just by, changing some of your habits of your screen use and taking better breaks. I bet you can get to 60. And if you manage that, then you're like, if I can get to 60, I can get to 70.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part, in my opinion, about reversing the whole thing by quantifying your eyesight and then playing the game of slowly getting more distance.
Mm-hmm. And that's really interesting that like your eyes fluctuate that much. Like it's almost not something you're like taught or is ever mentioned, that actually, that measurement can change so much depending on, your environment or where you are. Like that's really interesting.
Or which optometrist you visit.
See what?
Yeah, it's a non-static number, especially if your myopia is higher. But the higher it is, the more obviously variable the number gets. But yeah, I used to play that game. I would go to 5 optometrists in a day and I'd get 3 or 4 different numbers.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
But then
it's
wouldn't
not
that
objective?
Yeah, but then wouldn't you, you'd potentially get different prescription like glasses from that. So
100%, you will absolutely get different glasses. Yeah.
That's wild. Oh, it's definitely interesting to to talk about.
Because, okay, so if -2 is borderline, like 50 centimeters, especially if you're doing design work, you're going to move closer to the screen because it's detail work. Like it's harder to stay at a distance, even though it's worth building that habit if you can, right? And then take a day and don't wear your glasses on a Sunday, or just an hour. Start with an hour. Eventually, once a week, try to make it a half day, just an amount of time. And eventually, after 2 or 3 months of maybe not wearing your glasses for close-up if you can, again, with -2, it's kind of borderline, and playing a game of, hey, Sunday, I'm going to start the day with no glasses for a little while. Eventually, buy yourself a -1.75, just a quarter diopter lower. And one day, when you did the Sunday half day, no glasses, when you put your glasses back on, instead of the -2, put it on the -1.75, and I bet you won't notice the difference. In that order, first you're working out the close-up strain a little bit, then you're getting yourself used to not wearing them all the time, accepting a bit of blur, playing with how do I deal without them. Slowly you have a little bit of a comfort zone. I'm not saying throw them away, just kind of balance it out.
Yeah.
And then it's like your visual cortex, the part of your brain that interprets visual signals, kind of loses that reference point of the -2, because you haven't worn them for half the day and you've done it many times. And now you put on a slightly lower correction, ideally in good daylight, right? You won't know the difference. And then you can live with those, right? And now the next 3, 4, 6 months, doesn't matter. You're wearing -1.75s and you're already no longer in compliance with what the optometrists would tell you. Like that's kind of, I think, the process of having fun with this, because then 3, 4 months, 6 months from then, you can repeat the same thing again and going to a -1.5. It's fun.
That's the thing. You make it sound fun because it's not a ridiculous commitment. It is just try it. Like, take your glasses off for a little bit. Like you're not asking, such like a huge commitment, or like, to kind of go without your glasses and just, dump them immediately. Like I can understand why people, get to 60 or something and think, oh, actually I could, get to like the next, the next number and the next number. Like I could see how it's kind of like gamified almost. If you see a bit of progress, you're like, oh, I'll stick at it.
Yeah. And you don't want to make it strenuous. Like I don't believe in eye exercises. I don't believe in dramatic changes. It's just little wiggles in the right direction. Yeah. Right. Because you're busy, you have your thing going on, you have stuff. I'm not saying, this is not a religious experience where you have to join the church. It's just a little tweaks, and the little tweaks add up, and then you build them into habits so it doesn't become a commitment really every day. And then 6 months from now, you'll be like, I don't need this anymore. And then you have another go at it. And then for the next however many months, you don't have to think about it a whole lot. But before you know it, 2 years go by and you're going to be really close to, you're going to wear glasses sometimes, nighttime driving, movie theater. But in general, you won't need those things.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. I would love that. I mean, just, I don't know. It's just weird to think that as a teenager, like, I remember, like, I think I was 16 when I had to start wearing glasses because I just couldn't see the whiteboard in the classroom. And I remember, like, squinting and I could see it, like, clearly. And then, like, when I relaxed, my eyes just couldn't really see it. And that's when I thought, oh, I probably need glasses. And then I've just been kind of in that cycle since then, when actually maybe I didn't, need to start at such a, like, kind of high prescription potentially, or, maybe I could have, it wasn't like I was having headaches or anything like that. Maybe I could have started off differently, but just the fact that I could, we can do this at home and you can just kind of play with it a bit. I think that's what kind of sounds appealing.
Yeah. And at that point, it was a muscle spasm. It was because you were studying, spending a bunch of time in front of books, close up, right? Close up, that muscle is really tight. And that muscle was spasmed. It was stuck in close-up mode. Your eyesight didn't actually get worse. It was just a stuck muscle. And if somebody would have told you that and encouraged you to take more breaks, spend more time with distance vision, don't sit too close to the book, do it in clear daylight, maybe use reading glasses to challenge your eyesight a little bit, you would have never needed glasses. But that story doesn't make any money, right? So how can you ask anybody to do that for you? There has to be money in it, right? For it to be a thing. And the thing that I'm promoting is not profitable to anybody because I'm basically saying you don't need these things. So just in our economic reality, there's nobody to tell you this because, who's going to do it? What are you going to pay them for? The absence of treatment.
And also, I appreciate, like, your website and, like, your YouTube as well. It's full of advice and, like, resources and stuff. And, like, I know you have, like, guides and stuff like that, but you're not saying, like, you need to spend this money to, like, completely.
I totally would. The thing is, I made a bunch of money in the stock market and investing in various businesses, so I don't need it. So I'm not that nice of a person. It's just, this is my procrastination, fun, weird, what happened to this project, more so than I need this to make money. It would have a different tone for sure. And I do sell courses. They're usually full. I don't do a lot of it to fund now, and full-time developer is expensive, and people that contact you to do podcast stuff cost money. So I try to make it self-sustaining, but beyond that, if you want better eyesight, I want you to have the tools available, right? Because I relatively don't need anything in return for it.
Which is a very humble thing to say, that actually, you're not in it for the money. And I think a lot of people would be, but, the fact that
that's why we don't have a designer, for example. That's why everything looks like crap.
I don't think it looks like crap.
Oh my God, it's terrible.
But I think, like, I don't know, I appreciate things that are more kind of, like your YouTube channel, it's just you speaking. Like, there's no, like, faff or, like, fanfare, like, crazy kind of, motion graphics and stuff like that. People are here to listen to you kind of thing. So I think sometimes people appreciate that.
I want motion graphics. I want a beard, a giant beard superimposed on my face. I have nothing.
You just can't get the stuff.
No, I can't. We can't afford it.
And do you do, like, daily, like, is it like beard talks on your, like, YouTube? I was going to ask you about that.
Okay. So yeah, it's all just everything. Again, just imagine I'm drinking coffee and I'm doing silly things. I was trying to do more video stuff because I noticed over the years, things went from people reading blogs and websites to people consuming media in video format. So I was like, we need to get in that direction. And I was trying to make myself do more of it. So I called it the Daily Beard, trying to be daily, but it's not really daily. It's more small bits more frequently because people ask for it. And I say you can watch it daily, but it doesn't happen every day.
Almost daily. It's fine.
Almost eventually, yes.
I think that's good though, just to kind of keep up the kind of stream of content. I know like that's something I struggle with as well, like just trying to keep people engaged and, you know, like keep people like part of the discussion and stuff like that. So I think it's good that you're, you know, still on it and you're doing your podcast, you've got a website, you've got like so many different like channels of content going on. It must be like a lot to juggle.
Yeah. It's a couple hours in the morning and then just turn it off, and it's always in a state of unfinishedness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to like stress yourself out with it.
No. Yeah. And the main thing is just that, like, if I hear from you in 6 months going, hey, guess what? I'm at minus 1.5, that'll make me happy. That'll work.
Yeah. It must be great to get like that feedback and think, you know, it's not only yourself that you've, you know, managed to kind of change eyesight wise. You're like, there's other people who are really giving it a go.
Yeah. And it's a sharing thing also, because lots of people have introduced me to other ideas that have helped me. And I think this is a lot of the promise of the internet, that any one of us can research enough stuff, figure something out, and like a meritocracy, like if it's a good idea, it's going to spread. And then we're not so dependent on a big profit machine that needs to make money and therefore offers you a course of action that makes money as opposed to necessarily being good for you.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. No, I agree. Are there any other kind of like tips or anything else you want to say? Like, I know like I've watched your first like YouTube video where it's like, start here. And you're like, people just want steps. And I was like, I bet they do.
Yeah. The thing is, it's like what we talked about. Like the idea I gave you where to start is a good place to start. But I think look at this like taking a university course, like a simple one, but still it's a bit of an undertaking, because you want to learn a bit about the biology. You want to verify that I'm not just talking nonsense, for one. And then you want to understand how your eyes work. You want to understand this diopter thing. You want to learn how to measure your eyesight. You're going to invest a little bit of time to become your own sort of expert in what's going on. And then, you know, a few weeks, I mean, I spent years and years and years putting all this stuff together. You spend a few weeks just reading and digesting some of it. Set yourself a goal. Like, what would you do if you didn't need those things? Right? Like, you're much less likely to succeed if there's not a goal, a benefit, a thing that you want to do that glasses prevent you from doing or make it less fun. And you're like, okay, this is what I want to accomplish. Now you have a reason to read all this stuff. And I have a 7-day email guide that kind of walks you through basic steps. And then there's a bunch of videos and obviously the Facebook group. And you will spend a few weeks, but you will get the hang of it. It's not that complicated. And then from there, it's mostly just, you know, autopilot. The eyes will do their thing slowly.
I think that's a good thing to like kind of end on. Like your eyes are, you know, gonna try their best throughout this process, but having all these like tools and resources to kind of dip in and out of will just kind of keep you kind of motivated to do it as well. And I think it's definitely I'm gonna try and report back maybe in like 6 months' time, like you said, just to be like, this is how I'm doing. And just like, maybe I'll do like an updated podcast episode in a bit and be like, since having a chat with Jake, just like, you know, so that I'm accountable.
Just set a goal to get to minus 1.75. That's the only thing you need. Like, if you get to minus 1.75 and you wear those things and they work just fine, it's like flipping a switch. Yeah. You know, you go from the words I will try to the definitiveness of you've seen it work. And most people who've made one reduction successfully continue, right? Like, it's getting to that first reduction that's a challenge, but you make it successfully and you're like, well, I can do this. And then you kind of have fun with it from there.
Oh, just the like concept of it I look forward to, because I'm someone who's had to invest in like prescription goggles, prescription sunglasses, and I've always been jealous of people who could just wear normal sunglasses and like so
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it a go.
Go for it and let me know how it goes. I want to know. And if you have questions, just email me.
I will too. And I'll pop all your like links in the like show notes as well. So do you want to just do like a quick plug of all your social media? I think we've kind of mentioned them all, I hope.
Yeah. If you just go to endmyopia.org and on the top, there's a link for resources. There's just a giant pile of all the things that you can find community from.
Okay, great.
I'm good at marketing. Can you tell?
No, it's all good. That's great. Well, thank you so much for giving up like almost an hour of your time just to chat all things eyesight with me. I really appreciate it.
No, it was super cool. I really enjoyed our chat.
Oh, thank you.